3 days after my manager told me to start job hunting, my phone lit up with messages that made me sit straight up in bed. I had taken the week off, trying to breathe through the sting of being pushed aside, but every notification came in like an alarm bell. "Grace, where are you? Call me. It's urgent. We need you now." I stared at the screen, unsure which one to open first. Then another message arrived from someone in operations, all caps, no greeting. "Who approved this termination? Everything is shutting down." A second thread followed from our production supervisor. "Multiple lines stopped this morning. We can't source a thing. Has anyone found Grace Ellery?" Someone else added, "She ran all the Asia vendors. She must know what's happening." I rubbed my forehead and tried to steady my breathing. I had warned them quietly, professionally, that cutting those contracts without review was reckless. I had said it calmly, not dramatically, because panic never changed minds in a corporate office. But the person who replaced me dismissed every word. My phone buzzed again. It was a voicemail from the plant floor. I put it on speaker. "Grace, you won't believe this. The chief executive officer just flew in from Chicago. He walked straight into production and yelled, 'Where is the woman who ran Asia? He thinks we can't get the supply chain back online without you.'" I leaned against the wall and exhaled slowly. Of course he said that. Of course everything was falling apart. The contracts I had negotiated were the veins of this company, holding together partnerships that could not simply be replaced by phone calls and patriotic slogans. They had no idea what had been set in motion the moment my manager deleted everything. Another message popped up from a colleague I trusted, Grace. "Please come in. No one can explain any of this. Victoria said she streamlined your vendors, but now legal is panicking, procurement is hiding, the chief executive officer wants answers." I picked up my keys, still listening to the stream of messages piling in. They all wanted to know how this disaster unfolded. They did not know the real reason everything was falling apart. But I did. Victoria Langford waved me into her office with a sharp flick of her hand, eyes fixed on her screen. "Grace, sit. I want to move quickly today. The board is watching our domestic sourcing numbers, and I intend to deliver." I sat, folding my hands to steady myself. What exactly needs to move quickly? I found a new supplier. She said it like a triumph, then turned her monitor so I could see the name. It was the same Seattle subcontractor I had rejected last quarter after they failed 3 quality audits in a row. I kept my voice even. "They cannot meet aerospace tolerances. Their last batch—" "Grace, please." She cut me off, tapping her keyboard insistently. "Your long-distance projects have drained this department. Too many time zones, too many cultural complications, too much emotional hand-holding. We are simplifying." She opened my contract folder and selected everything. Contracts I had negotiated over 18 months. Relationships I had built one conversation at a time. I heard the clicks. "Delete, delete, delete. Victoria." I said quietly, "You are terminating agreements worth tens of millions." She smiled, slow and smug. "And you are done here. Better start job hunting." My throat tightened, but I kept my face calm. "Is that an official termination?" "It is a strong recommendation," she replied. "Take the hint. People who cling to outdated systems can't grow." She leaned back, pleased with herself. "I need a team that follows my lead, not one still loyal to foreign vendors." I glanced at her screen again. She did not even notice the red flags flashing from the new supplier's failed inspections. Instead of arguing, I nodded. "Thank you for letting me know." Her expression faltered for a heartbeat. "Thank you." "Yes," I said softly. "And since you want me out of the way, I'd like to request 1 week of paid time off. Starting tomorrow." "That's fine," she said quickly. "Relieved? Take all the time you need." I stood, smoothing my jacket, holding my voice steady even as panic churned beneath my ribs. "Have a good afternoon?" "Victoria." Her smile returned, triumphant and sure she had cleared the path she wanted. I walked out of her office still holding that small, deliberate smile. When I left Victoria's office, her words still echoing in my head, I heard another voice rise beneath them, my father's. I had tried for years to bury that sound, but it came back with perfect clarity the moment she erased those contracts. "Grace," he used to say, leaning over blueprints on the shop table. A handshake should matter as much as a signature. His machining shop in Spokane had survived for more than 20 years on trust, grit, and work that should have kept him steady. But when a corporation canceled 2 major contracts overnight, everything he built cracked open. I remembered the night he told us. He sat at the kitchen table with a stack of unpaid invoices. They said restructuring. He whispered, "No notice, no negotiation." My mother tried to keep her voice calm. "There must be someone you can call." Dad shook his head. They already moved on. His health started failing after that stress tightening around his chest, worries piling up faster than he could push them away. I heard him one morning in the garage, talking to himself while trying to start an old machine he could no longer afford to repair. I gave them everything, and they just walked. The pressure crushed him long before the doctors gave it a name. Back then, I didn't have the language for what I felt, but I knew one thing clearly: I would never let anyone do to others what was done to him. I studied global supply chain work because I wanted to protect the small shops, the family factories, the people who kept their promises even when larger companies didn't. So when Victoria deleted my vendor contacts, I didn't just see files disappearing. I saw fathers and mothers losing sleep. I saw workers wondering how they would cover next month's rent. She thought she was deleting my projects. She was deleting livelihoods. And the person threatening to repeat the worst story of my life was the same person signing my performance reviews. When I first joined Warrantech in Seattle, my director shook my hand and said, "We need someone who understands people, not just numbers." I took that seriously. For 18 months, I lived in airports and cramped conference rooms, learning the voices behind every contract. I remembered my first call with Aiko Tanaka in Osaka. "We rebuilt after the typhoon," she told me. "We can meet your textile specs, but we need stability. You'll have it," I promised. Warrantech values long-term partners. In Taiwan, Mr. Lin laughed through the phone as he explained a delay. "My son crashed his bike. I took him to the clinic. The molds will be finished tonight." "Take your time," I said. "Family first. We will work around you." In Mexico City, Miguel Santos wiped sweat from his brow during a video call. "If this contract holds, my daughters can finish engineering school. That is all I want. We'll grow together." I told him, "You deliver precision. We deliver consistency." And in Bulgaria, Elena and her husband Ivan whispered into the microphone late at night. "We left everything behind," Elena said. "This is our second chance. You'll have room to breathe," I said. "We are not here to squeeze you. Every vendor had a story. Every story mattered to me." So when I drafted their contracts, I added clauses that protected them if anything went wrong: coordinated withdrawal rights, mandatory notice periods, penalties for sudden termination. I explained it to legal as risk management. I explained it to myself as one thing: I will not let another family be crushed the way mine was. I never added those clauses to trap Warrantech. They were shields, not weapons. But a shield only works when someone bothers to use it. And the person with the authority to read those contracts had chosen not to read a single line. On my second day under Victoria's new regime, she stopped by my desk with a bright, brittle smile. "Grace, the board adores decisive leadership. They said my domestic sourcing plan shows real courage." She tapped her tablet like she expected applause. "We simplify, we save money, and we stop babysitting fragile overseas vendors. Everyone wins." I kept my hands still. Those vendors are meeting every requirement. Cutting them all at once is dangerous. She laughed softly. "There it is again. The emotional attachment. You act like these people are family. I act like they matter." I said, "Because they do." Victoria leaned in. "What matters is this company's reputation. When the chief executive officer sees I replaced your complicated network with clean, American first suppliers, he will finally notice the people willing to make bold moves. She walked off before I could speak. Moments later, I heard her telling another manager, Grace clings to outdated relationships. I run this department now. An alert pinged on my laptop, a new email chain. From legal termination of international contracts triggers withdrawal clauses. You must review Section 14 before executing further cancellations. Victoria replied within seconds. Noted. Proceeding as planned. Another message from legal followed. Firmer. These clauses require executive review. Victoria responded. We do not have time for unnecessary bureaucracy. I stared at the screen. Pulse climbing. Those clauses were the only thing keeping dozens of small businesses protected. Ignoring them was like cutting a brake line and assuming the car would simply glide. She passed my desk again. Grace, stop scowling. You are on paid time off. Go enjoy your week. I closed the email thread. I no longer had authority to intervene, and she no longer cared to listen. Victoria was too focused on her moment of glory to notice the warnings stacking around her, and she had just signed off on a contract she never bothered to read. On my first morning of paid time off, my phone buzzed before I even reached the kitchen. Aiko Tanaka's voice came through immediately. Grace, our contract shows terminated as of midnight. No notice. No explanation. Is this correct? My throat tightened. Aiko, I am no longer authorized to speak for Warrantech. Please review Section 14.2 of your agreement. There was a long pause, then a quiet inhale. Coordinated withdrawal rights. Immediate release from obligations if termination is without cause. Her tone shifted. Grace, this protects us. It was meant to. I said. Minutes later, Miguel Santos from Mexico City called. He sounded exhausted. We received the termination notice. Are we liable for anything? Please review Section 14.2. I repeated. I heard papers shuffling. Then his voice rose. It says we owe nothing, not 1 peso. We can walk today. You must do what is safest for your workers. Miguel hesitated. My daughters are studying. My employees depend on me. If we stay with no contract, we risk everything. I understand, I said softly, before I could breathe. Mr. Lin from Taiwan dialed in. Grace, your company cut all international contracts last night. I already notified the Vietnam group. They are checking the same clause. That is your right, I replied. He lowered his voice. Everyone is asking the same thing. Should we leave? I closed my eyes. That was the question I feared most. I cannot tell you what to do, I said, but I can tell you to protect your workers and protect your families. Make the choice that keeps them safe. Silence settled before he whispered, Thank you. We will decide quickly. As the calls kept coming, the truth settled heavily in my chest. I had designed those clauses to shield people from sudden cruelty, not to cripple an entire company. But Victoria had pulled the trigger without ever seeing what was attached to it. I could already feel the disaster forming, and I no longer had the authority to stop it. By the second morning of my paid time off, the messages from Warrantech shifted from confused to frantic. One supervisor texted me first, Grace. 3 shipments were supposed to land last night. Nothing arrived. Another wrote, Inventory buffers are thinning. We only have parts for 1 more production cycle. I typed back carefully. I am on leave. I have no visibility. A moment later, a message came from a junior planner I had trained. Victoria keeps saying the new domestic suppliers will deliver any minute. Is that true? I hesitated, then replied, Ask her directly. Within minutes, she wrote again. We asked. She said everything is under control. At almost the same time, a notification popped up an email forwarded to me by a sympathetic engineer. The new domestic supplier had finally responded to Victoria's request for immediate parts. Their exact words, We need 8 to 12 weeks to tool up. We have never produced aerospace-grade materials. I stared at the screen in disbelief. 8 to 12 weeks. Victoria had replaced proven partners across 5 countries with a supplier that needed 12 weeks just to begin. My phone rang next. It was Marco from our aerospace client. "Grace, did your team send us an updated timeline? It looks optimistic." He paused. "It does not match what we are hearing from ops." I swallowed. What did Victoria send? "She claims production will resume in 48 hours. I closed my eyes. That is not accurate. So we thought. He said, "We need the truth." I could hear his frustration, but I had no authority left to pull anything back. The only thing I could do was listen as the threads began snapping one by one. And somewhere inside Warrantech, Victoria was still bluffing, hoping no one would see the truth closing in around her. On the 3rd morning, my phone vibrated nonstop. A voice memo from operations came first. "Grace, 2 production lines are down. A 3rd just stopped. We cannot run anything without the international components." Another message followed. "The defense client is threatening penalties. They want a conference call in 1 hour." Then an email from the new domestic supplier landed in my inbox, forwarded by a panicked engineer. "We cannot meet Warrantech's specifications at this time. Our equipment is not capable of producing the required tolerances." Right below, it was another message from operations. 68% of our key parts came from the vendors Victoria terminated. We have nothing to replace them with. The internal chains started blowing up. From HR, was this approved by executive leadership? From finance, who authorized the mass cancellations? From ops, "We are dead in the water. Someone needs to explain." A final message arrived from a colleague on the floor. "Grace, the chief executive officer is here. He just walked into production and demanded, 'Where is the woman who ran Asia?'" I stared at the text, hands tightening around my phone. 3 days ago, Victoria said I was done. Now my name was in every thread, on every call, spoken by every person trying to stop the disaster she created. Then I received one more message, this one from Victoria herself. "Grace, if you know anything about why these foreign suppliers bailed, you need to come in. This is unacceptable. They are unreliable, and they blindsided us." I read her words carefully, the same arrogance now cracked with panic. She had no idea what she had triggered, and the only person who understood the system she destroyed was the one she pushed out the door. When Warrantech's executive assistant called and said, "Grace, the chief executive officer wants you in for a meeting," her voice shook like she already knew the disaster waiting on the other end of it. I agreed, grabbed my laptop, and drove in without answering any of the messages piling up. The boardroom was full when I walked in. Operations, finance, legal, audit, and Victoria sitting stiffly near the corner. The chief executive officer gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Grace, thank you for coming. We need clarity." Victoria spoke first. "She has been on leave. She has limited information." He raised a hand. "Victoria, let her talk." I opened my laptop. "I can walk you through exactly what happened." I clicked on the first file. "These are the international contracts terminated without notice." Section 14.2 outlines coordinated withdrawal rights. Legal leaned forward. "We warned her those clauses required review." I pulled up the email thread. "Your warnings were ignored." Victoria snapped. "We were moving fast. We needed domestic." The chief executive officer cut her off sharply. "You will wait your turn." I continued. "Here are vendor responses." Aiko Tanaka described being dismissed during a call. Miguel Santos documented repeated comments about foreign complications. Mr. Lin submitted a formal note stating he no longer believed Warrantech valued his company's contributions. Operations murmured among themselves as I switched slides. The domestic supplier Victoria selected failed 3 audits last quarter. They informed us yesterday they need 8 to 12 weeks before they can even begin tooling. Victoria stood abruptly. I had no knowledge of these delays. Before she could continue, the head of internal audit cleared his throat. "That is because you deleted the risk assessments we sent 3 weeks ago." Victoria froze, color draining from her face. The chief executive officer looked at me. Grace, is there a path to recovery? Yes, I said. If we rebuild the relationships we broke, and if those partners have written assurance that Victoria will have no involvement in international sourcing. Silence fell, thick and final. Victoria stared at me as if I had taken something from her. But all I had done was place the truth on the table, where it belonged. 2 days after the boardroom meeting, the chief executive officer called me back to headquarters. He didn't bother with small talk. Grace, the audit committee has reviewed everything. The damage reaches every division. I had to notify 3 major clients directly. I nodded. They deserved transparency. He exhaled heavily. Victoria will not be returning to this department. She is barred from all contract authority effective immediately. Compliance is flagging her across the industry. Any company that runs a standard background review will see exactly what she did. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just a quiet release. That is the right outcome. And you, he continued, have a standing offer. Director of Global Supplier Strategy. Full rebuild authority. Whatever you need. I appreciate that, I said, but I am leaving Warren Tech. He blinked, surprised. Grace, this company needs you, and I need a place where protecting people is not treated as a liability. He stayed silent for a long time, then finally nodded. If anyone deserves a clean start, it is you. I accepted a position the next week with a maritime logistics firm on the Seattle waterfront. Their chief operating officer told me, "We want a vendor system built on fairness. If you say it matters, we will follow your lead." It was the first time in years I felt hope instead of caution. Weeks later, an email arrived from Elena and Ivan in Bulgaria. Grace, thank you, not for saving us, but for refusing to let anyone erase us. You kept your promises. I read their message twice, letting the words settle. Victoria had spent her entire career believing she held the power, but the truth was simpler. Power belonged to the person who understood the system well enough to walk away and let it expose itself. I closed my laptop gently, knowing exactly why I had chosen this path.